You're listening to the broadband network of the Speech Improvement Company, helping people communicate since 1964.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to ElectionSpeakers.com, the place for the most unique critique of the major candidates and others who are trying to win your vote in this 2016 presidential election. I'm Dr. Dennis Becker, and I'll be your host for these special programs that are designed to give voters valuable information needed to make confident decisions on November the 8th. The talking tactics and techniques used by each candidate are our exclusive topics for this unique critique. We bring together a panel of communication coaches, political experts, average citizens, and in addition, we'll be receiving comments throughout the program from our listeners on social media. And finally, after all of the analysis, I'll ask each of our experts to declare a winner of the debate. So, who are our experts? Let's meet them. From left to right around your radio dial, joining us are three executive communication coaches from the Speech Improvement Company. Left to right around your dial, Kristen Curran Fowler. Welcome, Kristen.
Hello, Dennis.
Lori Schlaff.
Hello, Dennis.
And Ethan Becker.
Hello, Dennis and everybody.
And joining us by phone today from a remote distance, because she's working with clients, is Monica Murphy, Executive Communication Coach. Welcome, Monica.
Glad to be with you, Dennis. Thank you.
There she is. All right. So we have a lot to talk about today. We're discussing, of course, the first debate that took place between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in this presidential campaign election. So let's explain, first of all, that as we go through this, folks, we are also scoring the candidates on their speaking skills, their speaking style, and we're using a scorecard. And as you know, we've been doing this since 2008, and we always have a scorecard. We declare winners, and we have specific things that we look at and judge on and so forth. But what is this scorecard? Lori, I'm going to ask you, if you would, to explain to our listeners what this scorecard is all about, some of the things that we cover. Would you do that, please?
Sure, Dennis. If listeners would like to join us in scoring, you can go to ElectionSpeakers.com and you see a scorecard which has 8 dimensions, and of course you can weigh in with other comments that you have. So let's look at those 8 dimensions. Number 1 is eye contact. How did the candidates do with looking at each other and also with looking at the camera in a way that was effective? Number 2, vocal delivery. Did you like the sound of their voices? Did you find them too loud or too soft? Were they interesting to listen to? Number 3, clarity of speech. Did they include their word endings? Was there any slang like goin', comin', doin' that sounded weak or unprofessional? Number 4, language and messaging. How did you like the way that sentences were constructed? What about vocabulary? Were you impressed with the fluency of the message? Facial expressions is number 5. How did you feel when you looked at the candidates, let's say from the neck upwards? Did you get a friendly feel? Did you get a presidential feel? Did they have a variety of facial expressions that held your interest? Number 6 is hand gestures, what we sometimes call fancy gesticulating. Did each candidate use hands well? Was there too much gesturing on the part of any candidate? Number 7, body language. How were the candidates' posture? Finally, number 8 is connection to listeners. And what this means is, did you, as a listener or viewer, feel a connection to each candidate? Did you feel like each candidate was talking to you and to the American public?
Ethan, tell us how our listeners can get in touch with us.
Oh, you can find us on the internet at speechimprovement.com.
And if you type in electionspeakers.com, what happens?
Oh, it'll go right to the page with this scorecard, so you can download it yourself and listen to past episodes.
So, Monica, I'm going to start with you and ask you if you would give us your view of how the debate went, and not necessarily who you thought the winner was, but talk a little bit about one of the candidates, and you can start with whichever one you like, and we'll talk about what you saw from an objective, professional speech communication coaching perspective.
Well, thanks, Dennis. Overall, I was looking for something very specific in each of the two candidates. For Hillary Clinton, I was looking for her ability to build greater trust For Donald Trump, his issue was very clear. What he needed to focus on was controlling his temperament. And so the way they both used their communication skills to address those two particular criteria were what I was looking for tonight.
And as we go along here today, I want to ask you to register your opinions, your scores, and so forth on all of those things. But let's go to Kristen Curran-Fowler right now. Kristen, what were you looking for in the debate as you saw it?
I was looking, again, Monica, I think, brought up some really good points. I was looking for Trump to come across as more controlled in his communication. With Clinton, I was hoping that she would be approachable so that we could see what Monica brought up, which is that whole issue of can she be trusted?
Lori, how about you? What were you looking for as you went into the debate? What were you looking for and expecting?
Thanks, Dennis. A few things. One is our general definition of what is presidential, and I realize everybody has a different definition. So some of the characteristics that I often hear clients talk about. Number one, poise, especially when you're someone's disagreeing with you or you're under stress. Because guess what? That's what presidents do. So poise, being in control of yourself, being in control of your message. Second, was the candidate relating to what the American people care about? So their well-being, their family's well-being, education, as opposed to being overly self-conscious. Were they American public conscious? And number three, many people are looking for a clear expression of ideas, themes, and policies. In other words, were we able to understand what the candidate believed in? And many people are also looking for the candidates to sound intelligent.
Now, Ethan Becker, you do a lot of work with clients in other countries, other parts of the world. Did that in any way influence what your expectations were about coming into this debate, or whether you thought one or the other would make a difference in the sound of them overseas with some of the clients that you have not in the United States?
When you're dealing with an international environment, they're going to be focused on the things that are most related to them as it relates to the United States. Will this president be good for our country? Messages that would say we're going to work together. Messages that we're going to say that the U.S. is going to become an easy organization, an easy country to do business with. On a personal level, yeah, that's good for me. But just professionally with the clients that I work with, when they need to do dealings with the United States, they want it to be easier, not harder.
All right, well, good. We got perspective now from each of them. Yes, Monica, go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the things both candidates really need to be mindful of is how they use their eye contact, which is the first thing we have on our list. What kind of eye contact really are the candidates making with the camera? And I know we'll probably get into that a little bit more, but interestingly enough, I didn't think that was handled so well last night. I do, when we watched the debate, I do feel that
I agree.
Both candidates missed the opportunity to maintain better eye contact with the camera. And it wasn't really for, even at the very end, when you're making your closing comments, I was most sensitive to that. And my numbers did get skewed because I felt as though when Trump was making his closing comments, his eye contact was scattered. And it did touch the camera, and it didn't touch it enough, though. And I felt that when Clinton was making closing comments, she did lock a little bit in more her eyes with the camera when she was addressing things related to American allies and abiding by treaties. And I felt in that moment, and the way they used eye contact, she did come across as more presidential to someone outside of the country who might have been watching.
I was going to add to that. That was the first thing I noticed when Hillary started talking, was her eye contact was all over the place. It was the first thing that I noticed at the beginning of the debates. And Trump followed suit. Same thing. It was a lot of looking around the room, which is, you're in a live room. Physically, you're there. You forget that the camera, which is probably a couple 100 yards away or 100 yards away, that's where you've got to look, is right in the camera lens. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in a TV studio, and this was not a studio after all, it was a large auditorium, and you got to have a sense of the technology, that even though you may be, as you say, 100 yards away, 200 yards away from the camera, in fact, looks like, to the viewer at home, as though you're 4 feet away, that close-up. And we had that concern, we had that critique throughout the course of the campaign. Why is everybody yelling? Why are they all shouting? They were like 5 inches from the microphone. Why are they shouting? Part of the reason I got from that was that they were, throughout the campaign and at the debate, that they forget that they're not talking just to the people in that room. Now that's where the energy is, because you feel it. It's right there. It's in front of you. It's 10, 15 feet away. People are laughing and smiling and making faces at you. It's right there in the room. But the majority of your listeners are actually at home. And playing to the camera, so to speak, is an important skill. So we'll talk about that as we go along. Kristen, question for you about language, if I may. What did you notice about the words or the language that they did or did not use that was appropriate or effective in the debate last night?
Well, I looked at this as a whole, language and messaging. And when I took a look at how we defined that on our scorecard, a couple of things jumped out to me. And one of them was, could they take complex thoughts and simplify them? Another one was the speaker using appropriate and respectful words? Those two really jumped out, because that's what I typically look for and try to really pay close attention to in debates. I didn't feel like he used enough of the respectful language, because how I interpret this is he did a lot of interrupting and cutting off while Hillary Clinton was speaking. And I believe she did it as well. He did it a lot more often. I actually started counting how many times he interrupted her, and I stopped at 27.
Oh, boy.
So I felt that he, even when he made noises, or he actually said the word wrong or no, or he went to go speak, it was viewed as an interruption. And at times he also overtalked her. Was talking louder as she was talking.
Can I add on to
Sure.
that? Because last night when we were all watching and we were all texting each other, Dennis, you had mentioned at some point that he's speaking like a CEO, and that resonated with me, because a lot of what he's doing, I would see in a business environment, and we've all coached CEOs with these mannerisms, and in some environments that sort of, I'm going to jump in, I need to make the final decision, I am the boom, the fist banging thing. In some environments, that's a really effective approach, but only in some environments. Even in a business, what we've seen when you look at the research, that approach tends to result in a lot of turnover. And I think in politics, it's very, very different. And she started to talk a little bit about that. It's a very different style of communicating. I think it's worked well for him in a business environment, that I'm gonna, and people around him probably just shut up and take it, because what are you going to do? Argue with the boss? He's loud. It's hard to talk to. She didn't do that. And I think she did something very interesting. She was able to hold her own without looking arrogant, I thought, last night. Now, somebody who's already not favorable of her would have thought she was very arrogant and pompous. I get that you see things through a certain lens. But it's a very challenging dynamic. Well,
the idea, and Lori, I want to ask you about this too. I'll make a comment about the CEO remark. In many, many ways, we are, as voters, as viewers, as listeners, we are doing a job interview here. We're interviewing this guy for the position of CEO of our country, so to speak. So I looked at the whole debate as a job interview, and what that person would bring to the job, and how much he or she knew about it, and how confidently they said it, and all of those kind of things. No question but what this guy is accustomed to being a CEO. That's what he does. That's what he is. And he talks like a CEO, and as Ethan said, in almost every company, when the CEO says, everybody does. It's as simple as that. He's got that habit. So when he was speaking last night, his language in particular was what I asked Kristen. His language was the language of someone who is used to telling people what to do and getting the response.
So an authoritarian type
It's
of
very
CEO,
authoritarian.
because there's different kinds of CEOs that
different
we've
kind.
worked with. Very
Yeah.
collaborative, visionary.
You used the word authoritarian. There's a difference between being authoritarian and being authoritative. He is authoritarian in the way that he sounds, at least to me from last night anyway. An authoritarian person is someone who is sort of my way or the highway. That's it. I'm the boss. I'm the authority. My way or the highway. An authoritative person is someone who uses the authority to help you understand the issue. Yes, they have the authority to make the decision, and they may make the decision, but they use the authority to help you clearly see where they're coming from and why and so forth. To me, he was very authoritarian last night. What do you think, Kristen? And Monica, I want you to respond to the same thing after Kristen, please.
Lori.
Yeah. I agree, and I do believe that style is appealing to a lot of folks out there who do want to see someone take charge. So I thought he did, for those folks who are looking for that in their next president, he did a great job with that. So I would absolutely agree with your statement.
Okay. Monica, what do you think about that?
I think that the first half of the debate, in the beginning of the debate, the language and messaging and the style that Trump was using was extremely effective. It was very authoritative. It was not collaborative, but it also had a very emotional component in that he was delivering a very simple message. The words came across as caring. He was talking about defending American jobs, keeping jobs in America. And at that point, I think he literally was at his strongest. And it seemed like that is the kind of leader you want. You don't want someone that's been bogged down in politics for 30 years of their life. You want a CEO or a leader that can come in and emotionally see what needs to happen to get the country to a place where it would feel like it was being led. Having said that, I think that as we went through the debate, we would watch some of those terms be brought up, and then the way they were discussed, the leadership seemed to change. So, for example, if Trump did bring up the language of law and order, it was perceived as neutral because what he did not go on to do is he didn't go on as a leader would to then describe the plan or the strategy. So he was called out by that by Clinton when she would say, you can't just say law and order, you've got to come up with a plan. And when that plan piece wasn't clearly articulated in a way that aligned with the way the rest of his messaging was, then that made it look too far to one side, and I think that's where people somewhat tuned out. For Clinton, I think that she did have the plan and the opportunity, but as a leader, I would disagree with the earlier comment, and I think she did come across as arrogant in the way she was using her nonverbal smiling, and I know we'll probably get to that in a minute, but I wanted so much for her to smile more last night at other times. I felt like the smile was more of a smirk or a chuckle, and it was a tool that she was using to align with this audience that was supposed to be neutral.
I agree
when she would say, ha, chuckle, 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 fact checker, chuckle, fact checker, and I think that really hurt what she was doing, and it bothered me, and it really lessened the style where I saw her as a leader. It was an attempt at being collaborative, perhaps. It was not visionary, and I don't think that strategy worked well. So on both sides of the fence, I think the leadership styles were moving fluently throughout the night. There was a lot of fluidity there, and sometimes it was working, and sometimes it was very unbalanced.
Kristen, you want to make a remark about that?
No, I totally agree with what Monica brought up. I felt that her facial expressions did get her in a way that people could perceive her as being quite smug. That's what I got from that. When I saw her smiling or chuckling in a way that I said, God, you really should. In that case, we would coach someone to have more of a serious look, or maybe even be a little frustrated at some of what they were hearing to show that they were concerned. So the smiling and the chuckling, I do feel, did not help her become, when I started this off, I said she has to be seen as more approachable. She has to be, in the past, people have said that they don't see the human in her, that she sometimes looks superior or sounds superior. And I felt like that helped those people even solidify that thought more about her.
Yeah, I felt that she could smile in more places. This is Lori, by the way. However, I feel she was coached herself to chuckle when Donald Trump was putting her down, because that was the best strategy given all other strategies. Because remember, Hillary Clinton has a tendency to nod her head, which a lot of females do tend to do. So I think she wanted to purposely look dismissive, because she and her supporters feel dismissive of Trump. So I want to get back to language just for a second. So some people view debates in terms of memorable moments. So a couple of memorable moments that were viewed as negative. Hillary Clinton did call Trump crazy in one of her sentences, and that might have affected people in a negative way. And then Trump had a whole lot of zingers. And on the internet, people who were obese hackers were kind of upset because he used the term 400-pound hackers sitting on a couch may have been disrupting national security. Now, again, in terms of negative language, which I personally as a coach do not go for. Trump said she doesn't have the look, she doesn't have the stamina. And then she retorted, which I thought was most brilliant sentence of all. Well, as soon as he travels to 112 countries, releases dissidents, opens new opportunities in nations around the world, or spends 11 hours testifying in front of a congressional committee, he can talk to me about stamina. I think that was a brilliantly worded comeback.
It was one of her strongest, and probably something that she practiced and did very well. The guy, if I look at this as a job interview, the concern that I had about Donald Trump was that he speaks in hyperbole entirely too much. Everything is every country in the world, all over the world. Nobody likes us. It's too much hyperbole. Now the reason that's a question for me is because when you become president of the United States, there's a significant difference between, I call the CEO of the country, there's a big difference between being the CEO, President of the United States, and a government in a country, and being CEO of a company. CEO of a company, if you don't like somebody says, boom, they're done, they're fired. You don't like what they did, they said, boom, they're done, they're fired. President of the United States, CEO of the United States, it doesn't work that way. You cannot speak in hyperbole.
You can't fire Congress.
Not only within the country, but within the world. When you say things that are just sort of off the cuff, as he does often, that off the cuff kind of a style can be very dangerous, it seems to me, around the world.
Also, I took a look at did the candidates get defensive in their language, in their nonverbal facial expressions? And that was a big moment for me to see, can they keep their defensiveness down? And I feel, I'm curious to hear what others heard and saw, but I feel like there was a moment. Monica was right. The first, I say for me, 15, not more than 20 minutes, I thought Trump's style was right on the money. And then something happened and a defensive button got pushed.
I have some thoughts about that. Because, same thing. In the beginning, he felt very passionate. And when you look at the combining or comparing your speaking delivery with the substance, that's where it went wrong. In the beginning, his speaking delivery was very passionate about an issue. He was talking about jobs and things, and it was resonating. Later, he was very passionate about him. He was passionate about his deals, his business deals. He was passionate about it was personal stuff, and it wasn't resonating. I don't think it was resonating at all later on. And that's where there was a disconnect, and it comes across as defensive.
Well, so much to talk about. Obviously, a lot more. Monica, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're up to time. So I'm going to ask Monica to go first, since you are eager to talk. I'm going to ask you to go first, and I want to hear each of the executive communication coaches who are with us today to declare a winner. Who do you think won this debate based on the kind of things that we've been talking about and what are the kind of things that are on our scoreboard? Who do you think won? So, Monica, I'm going to ask you to go first. And just to remind,
this does not reflect who
not
you
at all reflect
are
who you
voting
think is
for
a better
or
person
who you want.
to vote for. Not at all. We're looking at this objectively as a speaker who had the job of presenting him or herself and their views in this debate last night. Who did the better job? Now, I'm going to ask each of you to do that in about 15 seconds. And Monica, I'm going to ask you to go first.
I will start off. One thing we didn't get to talk about that really had an effect on my scores, though, was the use of the split screen. And that is something we don't always see, and we haven't seen in debates in the past, consistently up on the screen. And where that really skewed my numbers was watching the candidates when they were in their listener mode, what their facial expression was. And that's really something that skewed my overall score here. So
what's your overall score? Who won, Monica?
Overall score, I think that it was very close, in terms of our criteria, but I have Clinton at 55 and Trump at 50. 55 to 50.
All right, so pretty close for you. All right, Lori Slough.
All righty. So my criteria, which really differentiated the two candidates, one is command of language and issues as expressed verbally, and secondly, preparation and physical control. So I guess that's three things. So my rating was a bit different than Monica's. I rated Hillary Clinton with a 58 total and Donald J. Trump with a 30 total.
All right, thank you, Lori. Ethan Becker, who won the debate?
All right, I've got 57 Clinton, 43 Trump, and some of these things were very similar. Eye contact, they both got 5s. Vocal delivery, Clinton 8, Trump 6. Hand gestures were interesting because I thought Hillary was a little bit too much early on, felt like band leading. But then it mellowed out a little bit. Trump didn't use much at all. Body language, Hillary took that one. And connection to listeners, I think that's a relative one. So,
All right, so thank you very much. Now, Kristen Curran-Fowler, who won the debate?
In my opinion, communication-wise, I feel that Hillary Clinton won this debate. My numbers were 61 to 48. 61 being Hillary Clinton and 48 being Donald Trump. And I used some of the same criteria that has already been mentioned. Messaging was big for me. Language and messaging was huge. And as eye contact has been noted, body language and facial expressions were huge for me.
Interesting thing, because your numbers come very close to what the CNN poll was. CNN polled people around the United States from Republican and Democratic and independent sides, and their numbers came out to be winning 62% Hillary Clinton, losing 27% Donald Trump. So very close to what you said, Lori, very to Kristen, rather, very close.
Before we wrap, I wonder if it would be interesting to go around real quick and see, is there any tips that anybody has for either candidate? I know this is going to drag us out, but I'll deal with the sponsors. But any tips that we would have for the candidates, what could they do to improve?
We don't know what happened behind closed doors, but Trump and his surrogates seem to be kind of proud that he wasn't preparing that much. And as a coach,
yeah.
And of course the opposite with Hillary. You know, she was barricaded in Chappaqua, New York, studying and practicing with a million different relatives. So as a coach,
Lori, I loved your line. I loved that line, Lori, when she said, "I prepared for this debate and I prepared to be president."
that was another great line, because I bet she predicted that he would put down the fact that she had to study. So,
okay, so answer the question.
Yeah.
What could they do, he or she
Yeah.
do, to get better?
Well, as a coach, you know, for business clients and, you know, candidates, I'd say prepare in a way that allows you to be comfortable and conversational at the debate.
Kristen?
I have advice. I have a different advice for each. Donald Trump needs to be more controlled, needs to be seen as more presidential. So really working on those nonverbals, especially facial expressions. Hillary Clinton, I feel, needs to do a little bit more control with how she's coming across. I want her to control some of that facial expression, the smiling and the laughter that was used.
Okay, Monica Murphy, what do you think? What could they do?
Overall, I would say for Hillary Clinton, she's got to show more what we call vocal variety, a much greater range where she shows that things matter with the way she uses just her voice tone. For Donald Trump, I think he needs to continue to focus more on being conversational, as if he is talking to someone and he cares about the issues, as opposed to focusing just on his accomplishments.
Good. Ethan?
I think with Hillary, I liked the smiling, and I'd say to control it, be more aware that the medium that you're communicating through with this split screen, it exaggerates it a little bit more, so more awareness would be good. With Trump, I'd say you got to practice. You got to surround yourself with people who are not going to say, just be yourself. Practice, because that is how we become more comfortable and familiar with the facts. You don't have to memorize, but you've got to practice this, and you got to actually do it, not talk about what you're going to do. You could actually do it.
Well, I'd say that finally, in our language, she needs to be more pathos. He needs to be more logos, that is, rather. He needs to be able to show a little bit more logic and stability. She needs to show a little bit more emotion and capability of contacting with folks. So anyway, those are our views for right now, and we've come to the end of our time together for this edition of ElectionSpeakers.com. And I want to thank all of our panelists left to right around your radio dial: Kristen Curran-Fowler, Lori Schlaff, Ethan Becker, and Monica Murphy. Thanks to all of those of you who have communicated with us on social media, and special thanks to our listeners. Remember, our goal here at ElectionSpeakers.com has been the same for the past 3 presidential elections. We've been together now since 2008, and that is to help you be an informed and confident voter. So we're inviting you to be with us again following the next debate, which is vice presidential debate, and that's on October the 4th, and then the second presidential debate on October the 9th. You can hear any of our ElectionSpeaker.com programs over the years by tapping into our archive, and that can be done simply by visiting ElectionSpeakers.com or the Speech Improvement Company's website, SpeechImprovement.com. We're a production of the Speech Improvement Company, and so I'll say with that, until next time, this is Dr. Dennis Becker saying thanks for listening and bye for now.
You're listening to the broadband network of the Speech Improvement Company, helping people communicate since 1964.